But we begin with that major earthquake rocking Northern California. Local officials say there is widespread damage after the 6.4 magnitude quake struck early this morning. Our Rena Roy tracking the latest for us from Los Angeles. So, Rena, just tell us, what do we know right now? We're getting some word of injuries.
Right, Alexis. So the details, they are still coming in at this hour. What we do know from Humboldt County officials is that there are at least 2 confirmed injuries. They are fall-related injuries, a broken arm and a head injury. But they are stressing that we don't know the full scope of injuries at this hour because they are still making contact with cities in that area to get that information. But at this hour, there are no known fatalities. We know that the 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit at around 2:34 this morning. You can imagine a lot of people were likely jolted out of their sleep when this happened. This earthquake hit 200 miles north of San Francisco on the Northern California coast, as you said, near the Ferndale area. Officials are telling us that the Rio Dell area has been hit the hardest. There are several house fires there. We also know of downed power lines, power outages, gas leaks, and at least one collapsed structure. As you said, this damage is widespread. Again, they are still assessing the scope of the damage here. Alexis.
And you mentioned thousands still without power there in Humboldt County. Any idea how long it could take for electricity to be restored?
So, Alexis, we do know that PG&E, they have activated their emergency response plan. Crews are out there in the field. They are responding to this, but they are still assessing, and they have not given us a timeline at this hour. When it comes to the number of power outages, though, we do know that earlier this morning at the peak, over 71,000 customers were without power, and that's 71% of customers in Humboldt County. So a good chunk of people have been affected here. And remember, this comes just days after a 3.6 magnitude earthquake hit the Bay Area itself. Alexis.
All right, Rena Roy, thank you.
All right, well, out west, Northern Californians were shaken out of bed today. A powerful 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit the region, causing damage and leaving tens of thousands of people there without power. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now. Steve, just give us a sense of scale. I mean, how big was this earthquake? And we talked about power, but was there any sort of damage or injuries in the area?
Yeah, Morgan, now speaking from experience, I can tell you 6.4 is no joke, and people were reporting shaking from anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds. So if you're at home and you've never experienced an earthquake, anything over a 6.0 for 20 seconds, that is a long time. And there was damage. I want to get to good news, though, right up front. This is not catastrophic damage. No life-threatening injuries reported. Certainly no deaths. That does not mean, however, we are not currently in an emergency situation. This thing happened at about 2:30 in the morning. Again, people reported shaking for about 20 seconds. This is off the coast of Humboldt County, so farther north than San Francisco, about 7 miles from a town called Ferndale, where, again, homes are cracked, roads are cracked. About 70,000 people are without power. There are gas leaks reported. About 2 injuries that we're hearing so far, one a head injury, the other a broken bone. But again, those are not life-threatening. Crews are racing around to try to fix all those problems, restoring the energy, getting those gas leaks cleaned up, making the area safe for people. But by the way, they're having to do that while about 30 aftershocks have been reported. So still a dangerous situation, an emergency, and crews are doing their best to handle it. Morgan.
It's interesting you mentioned those aftershocks, Steve, because if you look just a year ago today, there was yet another sizable earthquake. So how does this sort of back-to-back activity, if you will, sort of affect the people who live there?
Well, look, yeah, as you know, I'm from Detroit, so I don't understand how anybody gets accustomed to earthquakes whatsoever. They are the worst thing in the world to me. But people do, you know, they have gone through them before, and these emergency services as well. So they're about 5 from 6.0 to 7.0 from California to Nevada. They know how to handle it, and they're doing it. Morgan?
My second favorite Michigander reporting live from California. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson. Steve, thanks so much.
A firestorm erupting over a newly elected Republican congressman who reportedly lied about his resume, and that helped him win the seat. The New York Times reporting that George Santos, the new representative elected from Long Island, never worked for Citigroup or Goldman Sachs on Wall Street, even though he touted his experience at both companies along the trail. Santos also claimed he graduated from New York's Baruch College, but the school says there's no record of him ever attending. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins me now. Gabe, What else does the New York Times question in there looking through his background? And has there been any response from the congressman?
Hi there, Andrea. Well, there has not been a response from the congressman or the congressman-elect. There has been a response from his lawyer, but I can tell you among the other questions here that were raised in that New York Times article, there seems to be little to no evidence about the animal rescue group that Santos listed on his resume, Friends of Pets United. And also, according to the New York Times, he has long touted his family's real estate holdings, and there seems to be very little evidence of that. Now, I want to get to the statement released by his attorney late yesterday, saying in part, quote, "It's no surprise that Congressman-elect Santos has enemies at the New York Times who are attempting to smear his good name with these defamatory allegations." But it's notable, Andrea, that statement does not actually speak to the substance of those allegations. Santos is facing increasing pressure, though, from Democrats in his district. Take a listen to what one of them had to say this morning about what should happen next.
Lying about every line on your resume is truly unprecedented. What he has done is he has spat in the face of every resident in the 3rd Congressional District and said that facts do not matter. It is the most selfish and egregious case of lying I have ever seen. He should do the right thing and step aside.
And of course, Andrea, still no indication that he would step aside at this point, but Democrats are urging for some sort of House ethics investigation at this point. Again, no on-camera response from Congressman-elect Santos himself just yet, Andrea.
The Supreme Court bailed out Joe Biden tonight, ruling that Title 42 is going to remain in place for now. Without it, we were bracing for a massive surge of illegals at the border, which no one was ready to handle because things are already a disaster. Take New York, for example. We've lost count of how many busloads of migrants have been sent here. But the numbers must be staggering because Mayor Eric Adams is panicking. The city's using all of its money in housing on illegals. And now he's warning that cuts for New Yorkers could be coming. So services for tax-paying Americans are going to get cut in order to help the migrants. Whatever happened to that great tent city? Doesn't seem right. But it's nothing compared to what people in the border towns are dealing with for nearly 2 years. Those towns have been rocked thanks to Joe Biden. But wait a second. The media says this isn't a Biden problem. This is a Republican problem.
Now, with no end in sight to the war in Ukraine, cities and towns across Russia are scaling back their New Year celebrations, cancelling large-scale concerts and firework displays. At the same time, the Russian authorities are using this festive season to promote patriotism and to glorify the armed forces. Steve Rosenberg reports from the Siberian city of Chita.
At first glance, Siberia is a world away from the war in Ukraine. But normality is an illusion, because war is changing Russia, all of Russia, pushing the country in a darker direction. In Chita, they're preparing for the ice festival. No Santas with reindeers. This year, it's soldiers with Kalashnikovs, a whole army of them. Cold War, to glorify the hot war Russia's waging in Ukraine. We're fighting a war, Tatiana says, so it's right to have these ice soldiers here. Ludmila agrees. We're defending our country from Nazis, she tells me. Russia's being attacked on all fronts, including with LGBT propaganda. We reject these alien values. Russians never used to say these kind of things to me. Kremlin messaging has convinced many here that Russia's in an existential battle with the West.
When it's 26 degrees below zero, as it is now, it's difficult to speak, let alone to think. And in many ways, the pro-Kremlin propaganda that Russians are exposed to in the state media here acts like minus 26. It prevents many people from thinking rationally about what is happening here and why.
Comfort and joy are in short supply, but there's patriotism aplenty. From Siberian snowmen flying the flag to the letter Z, the symbol of the military operation. And Chita TV showed school children writing letters, not to Father Christmas, but to Russian troops in Ukraine. But some Russians see patriotism differently. Ivan Losyev is against the war. On social media recently, he shared a dream he'd had in which he met President Zelensky of Ukraine. For that post and others, he was taken to court and fined for discrediting the Russian army.
The closer you get to the downfall of an empire, the more stupid the laws become. Patriotism is loving your country, but criticizing it to bring change. Patriotism is wanting to make your own city better so that people want to live there and live well. But Russia's patriotism is about bombing Ukraine to pieces. Our leaders don't want our country to be better. They just want people in another country to live worse.
A year that changed Russia, and the world is nearing its end. One thing Russians won't be celebrating is peace on earth. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Chita, Siberia.